ഭദ്രം കർണേഭിഃ ശൃണുയാമ ദേവാഃ ഭദ്രം പശ്യേമാക്ഷഭിര്യജത്രാഃ സ്ഥിരൈരംഗൈസ്തുഷ്ടുവാഗുംസസ്തനൂഭിഃ വ്യശേമ ദേവഹിതം യദായുഃ സ്വസ്തി ന ഇന്ദ്രോ വൃദ്ധശ്രവാഃ സ്വസ്തി നഃ പൂഷാ വിശ്വവേദാഃ സ്വസ്തി നസ്താർക്ഷ്യോ അരിഷ്ടനേമിഃ സ്വസ്തി നോ ബൃഹസ്പതിർദധാതു. ഓം ശാന്തി ശാന്തി ശാന്തി. ഹരി ഓം.
നമുക്കെല്ലാവർക്കും നമ്മൾ പ്രൊഫഷണലുകളായിട്ടുള്ള ഇവിടെ സന്നിഹിതരായിരിക്കുന്ന നമുക്കെല്ലാവർക്കും നമ്മുടെ പ്രവൃത്തി മേഖലകളിലും ആധ്യാത്മിക ജീവിതത്തിലും നമ്മുടെ വ്യക്തിപരമായ ജീവിതത്തിലും ഉള്ള പല വെല്ലുവിളികളെയും നമ്മളിന്ന് നേരിട്ടുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. നമ്മുടെ കർമ്മരംഗങ്ങളിലും നമ്മുടെ എല്ലാ രംഗങ്ങളിലും പല വിധത്തിലുള്ള വെല്ലുവിളികൾ നേരിടുന്നു. ഇവയെ വളരെ സൂക്ഷ്മമായി നമ്മൾ പര്യാലോചിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഈ മനസ്സ് എന്നുള്ള ആ ഒരു വസ്തുതയെ അതിനെപ്പറ്റി ആലോചിക്കുമ്പോൾ മനസ്സെന്താണെന്നും മനസ്സിൻ്റെ പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ എന്താണെന്നും മാനസിക ആരോഗ്യം ഇങ്ങനെ പല വിഷയങ്ങളിൽ നമുക്ക് ആലോചിക്കേണ്ടതായിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഭാരതീയമായ വൈജ്ഞാനിക ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളിൽ മനസ്സ് വളരെയധികം ആലോചനകൾക്ക് നൂറ്റാണ്ടുകളായി സഹസ്രാബ്ദങ്ങളായി ആലോചനാ വിഷയമായിട്ടുണ്ട്. അതോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ ആധുനിക ശാസ്ത്രത്തിൻ്റെ കഴിഞ്ഞ 2-3 നൂറ്റാണ്ടുകൾക്കകത്ത് പലതരത്തിലുള്ള പഠനങ്ങൾ നടന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സ് എന്ന വിഷയത്തെ അധികരിച്ച് ഭാരതീയ വൈജ്ഞാനിക ശാസ്ത്രവും ആധുനിക ശാസ്ത്രവും നൽകുന്ന കാഴ്ചപ്പാടുകളെ സമന്വയിപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് ഏതേത് മേഖലകളിൽ നമുക്ക് ഓരോരുത്തർക്കും വ്യക്തിപരമായി നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിലെ വെല്ലുവിളികളെ നേരിടാനായി നമുക്ക് സജ്ജരാകുവാനായി മനസ്സിനെ ഏറ്റവും കൂടുതൽ ശക്തിപ്പെടുത്തി നമുക്ക് മുമ്പോട്ട് പോകാനുള്ള ഒരു പ്രവർത്തനത്തിന് ഉള്ള ഒരു വേദിയായിട്ടാണ് നമ്മുടെ ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ അധ്യാത്മ ശിബിരം, ഏകദിന ശിബിരം ഇവിടെ നമ്മൾ വിഭാവനം ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്.
ഇന്നത്തെ ഈ ഒരു ഏകദിന സെമിനാറിലേക്ക് പ്രവേശിക്കുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് കാലടിയിൽ പരംപൂജ്യ ശങ്കരഭാരതി സ്വാമികളുടെ നേതൃത്വത്തിൽ ഇത്തരമൊരു പ്രസ്ഥാനം രൂപപ്പെടുന്നതിൽ നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും അങ്ങേയറ്റം വാക്കുകൾക്ക് അതീതമായ രീതിയിൽ സന്തോഷിക്കുകയാണ്. കാരണം ഭഗവാൻ ഭാഷ്യകാരൻ്റെ ജഗദ്ഗുരുവിൻ്റെ ഈ ജന്മസ്ഥലിയിൽ നമുക്കെല്ലാം അറിയാം, ദീർഘകാലമായി ശൃംഗേരി മഠം പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അവിടെ പൂജകളും ശങ്കര സ്മാരകങ്ങളായ പല വിദ്വത് ചർച്ചകളും എല്ലാം ഭംഗിയായിട്ട് നടക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. ശങ്കര ജീവിതത്തെ ഓർമ്മിപ്പിക്കുന്ന കാഞ്ചി കാമകോടിയുടെ സ്തൂപമുണ്ട്. കേരളത്തിൻ്റെ സമീപകാല നവോത്ഥാനത്തിന് ഏറ്റവും വലിയ നേതൃത്വം വഹിച്ച ആഗമാനന്ദ സ്വാമികളുടെ ദീർഘവീക്ഷണത്തിനനുസരിച്ച് രൂപീകരിക്കപ്പെട്ട സ്ഥാപിക്കപ്പെട്ട ശ്രീരാമകൃഷ്ണ അദ്വൈതാശ്രമമുണ്ട്. ഇതൊക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. എല്ലാം നല്ല രീതിയിൽ പ്രവർത്തിക്കണമുണ്ട്. വളരെ സ്തുത്യർഹമായ രീതിയിൽ എല്ലാം പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. എങ്കിലും തീർത്തും ശാസ്ത്രത്തിൽ അധിഷ്ഠിതമായി, അതും ഭഗവാൻ ഭാഷ്യകാരൻ കാണിച്ചു തന്ന ആ മാർഗത്തിലൂടെ വിചാരപ്രക്രിയകളെ മുന്നോട്ട് കൊണ്ടുപോകുന്നതിന് ഉചിതമായൊരു സ്ഥാനം, അതും എല്ലാവരെയും ചേർത്ത് ഒന്നിച്ചു കൊണ്ടുപോകണമെന്ന സങ്കല്പത്തോടു കൂടി പ്രവർത്തിക്കുന്ന സ്വാമിജിയുടെ നേതൃത്വത്തിലുണ്ടാവുന്നത് നമുക്കെല്ലാം അങ്ങേയറ്റം ആനന്ദകരമാണ്. അത് ഹർദ്ദമായി പ്രകടിപ്പിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് തുടർന്നുള്ള കാര്യക്രമങ്ങളിൽ നമ്മുടെ എല്ലാവരുടെയും ശ്രദ്ധയും സഹയോഗവും ക്ഷണിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് വളരെ ഹ്രസ്വമായി മാത്രം ചില വാക്കുകൾ പറയട്ടെ. ഇവിടെ സമയബദ്ധമായിട്ട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ നീങ്ങേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. അതുകൊണ്ട് അല്പമാത്രം 1930കളിൽ ശ്രീരാമകൃഷ്ണ പ്രസ്ഥാനത്തിലെ വളരെ മുതിർന്ന സന്യാസി ശ്രേഷ്ഠനായിരുന്ന സ്വാമി നിർവേദാനന്ദജി ഒരു ഗ്രന്ഥം പ്രകാശനം ചെയ്തു. സയൻസ് ആൻഡ് റിലിജിയൻ എന്ന്. അതിലെ ഒരു ചാപ്റ്റർ, വളരെ ശ്രദ്ധേയമായൊരു അധ്യായം, ഷെയ്ക്കിംഗ് ഓഫ് ഹാൻഡ്സ് എന്നാണ്. സ്വാമിജി അതാണ് ആ പേര് കൊടുത്തത് അധ്യായത്തിന്, ഷെയ്ക്കിംഗ് ഓഫ് ഹാൻഡ്സ്. ആ ലേഖനത്തിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ ഒന്ന് പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ശാസ്ത്ര വീക്ഷണത്തിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ശാസ്ത്രത്തെ സംബന്ധിക്കുന്ന വീക്ഷണത്തിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഇടയിൽ കുറേ അപാകങ്ങൾ വന്നു പോയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഒന്ന്, ശാസ്ത്രത്തെ പ്രാചീനമെന്നും ആധുനികമെന്നും വിഭജിക്കുക. അത് ഏറ്റവും വലിയൊരു അപാകമാണ്. കാരണം ശാസ്ത്രത്തിനൊരു നൈരന്തര്യമുണ്ട്. രണ്ടാമത്തെ അപാകം, പാശ്ചാത്യമെന്നും പൗരസ്ത്യമെന്നും വേർതിരിക്കുക. ഈ വേർതിരിവുകൾക്കിടയ്ക്ക് ചില പാലങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാവേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. എങ്ങനെ ഈ പാലങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാക്കും? അതിൽ സ്വാമിജി നിർദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്, ഒന്ന്, തീർത്തും ഭൗതിക വിജ്ഞാനീയത്തിൻ്റെ അന്വേഷണ മേഖല, ക്വാണ്ടം ഫിസിക്സും മറ്റും കൂടുതലായിട്ട് മുന്നോട്ട് പോട്ടെ. അതുപോലെ മറ്റൊരു മേഖല പറയുന്നത് സൈക്കോളജിയുടെയാണ്. കുറേ ഈക്വേഷൻ്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിൽ മാത്രം മനസ്സിനെ സമീപിച്ച് ശീലിച്ച അവസ്ഥയിൽ നിന്ന് കുറേ കൂടി സൈക്കോളജി മുന്നോട്ട് പോകട്ടെ. ഈ സമയത്ത് ഭാരതത്തിലെ ഋഷീശ്വരന്മാർ ഈ വക വിഷയങ്ങളിൽ എന്ത് സഹസ്രാബ്ദങ്ങൾക്ക് മുമ്പ് പറഞ്ഞു വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടോ, ഈ രണ്ടറിവുകളുടെയും ഏകത ബോധിക്കും. ആ ഏകത ബോധിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അപ്പോഴാണ് ഈ ഷേക്കിംഗ് ഓഫ് ഹാൻഡ്സ് സംഭവിക്കുന്നത്. രണ്ടായി പിരിഞ്ഞ രണ്ടുപേര് ഭിന്നിച്ചും കലഹിച്ചും വിമർശിച്ചും ഇനി വില കുറച്ചുമൊക്കെ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന രണ്ടുപേര് ഒന്നിച്ച് കൈകൊടുത്ത് ഒന്നായി ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലിരിക്കും. ആ ഇരിക്കുന്ന കാലം വിദൂരമല്ല എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് ആ ആർട്ടിക്കിൾ അവസാനിക്കുന്നത്. ഏകദേശം 90 വർഷങ്ങൾക്ക് മുമ്പ് രചിച്ച ഒരു ആർട്ടിക്കിളാണെന്ന് ഓർമ്മിക്കുക. വാസ്തവത്തിൽ ഈ ദിശയിൽ ധാരാളം പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടാവേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. ഇവിടെ സൂചിപ്പിച്ച 2 ഗവേഷണ പദ്ധതി മാത്രം മുന്നോട്ട് പോയാൽ മതിയോ? വ്യക്തിപരമായി നമ്മുടെ അഭിപ്രായം പോരാന്നാണ്. ഇപ്പം ഇവിടെ സൂചിപ്പിച്ചത്, ഒന്ന് ഫിസിക്സിൻ്റെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫിസിക്കൽ സയൻസിൻ്റെ, വിശേഷിച്ച് ക്വാണ്ടം ഫിസിക്സിൻ്റെ ഒക്കെ ഗവേഷണങ്ങൾ മുന്നോട്ട് പോവുക. 2, സൈക്കോളജി കൂടുതൽ ആഴത്തിലേക്ക് മുന്നോട്ട് പോവുക. അത് മാത്രം പോരാ. എന്തുകൊണ്ടെന്നാൽ കാലത്തിൻ്റെ പരിണാമത്തിനനുസരിച്ച് ഭാരതീയ ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള ശരിയായ കാഴ്ചപ്പാടുകളും ഇന്ന് കുറേ അസ്തമിച്ചു എന്ന് പറയുന്നില്ല, എങ്കിലും മങ്ങി വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. വേദത്തിലും വൈദിക ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളിലും, വൈദികം എന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുമ്പോൾ കേവലം വേദാന്തമോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇതിഹാസങ്ങളോ പുരാണങ്ങളോ മാത്രമല്ല, മന്ത്രാദി ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങൾ ഉൾപ്പെടെ, അതിലുപരി വിപുലമായ ദർശന സാഹിത്യം ഉൾപ്പെടെ എല്ലാത്തിനെയും ചേർത്തിട്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ വൈദികം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ചിലപ്പോൾ പ്രത്യക്ഷത്തിൽ വേദഭിന്നമാണോ എന്ന് നമുക്ക് തോന്നിപ്പോയേക്കാവുന്ന ചില താന്ത്രിക ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളടക്കം നമ്മൾ വൈദികം എന്നുള്ളതിൽ പെടുത്തേണ്ടി വരും. കാരണം അവ വേദവിരുദ്ധങ്ങളല്ല, വേദ അനുസാരിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ വേദത്തെ പിൻപറ്റുന്നില്ല എന്നുള്ളത് ശരിയാണ്, പക്ഷേ വേദ അനുസാരിയാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് അവയെയും നമുക്ക് വൈദികം എന്നുള്ളതിൽ പെടുത്തേണ്ടി വരും. അപ്പോൾ അവയെക്കുറിച്ച് ശരിയായൊരു കാഴ്ചപ്പാട് നമുക്കുണ്ടാവണം. ഒരു ഭാഗത്ത് എന്താണ് ഋഷീശ്വരന്മാർ ഉപദേശിച്ചത്, അതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് വ്യക്തമായ കാഴ്ചപ്പാട് ഒരു ഭാഗത്തുണ്ടാവുക. മറ്റൊരു ഭാഗത്ത് നേരത്തെ സൂചിപ്പിച്ച ഗവേഷണ പദ്ധതികൾ കൂടുതൽ മുന്നോട്ട് പോവുക. ഇത് രണ്ടും സാധിക്കണമെങ്കിൽ അടിസ്ഥാനമായി സയൻസ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സിൽ വരുന്ന ടെക്നോളജിയുടെ കുറേ ഭാഗങ്ങൾ മാറ്റേണ്ടി വരും. അപ്ലൈഡ് സയൻസിൻ്റെ കുറേ ഭാഗങ്ങൾ മാറ്റേണ്ടി വരും. കാരണം സയൻസ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ മനസ്സിൽ കടന്നുകൂടുന്നത് പലപ്പോഴും സയൻസ് അല്ല, പിന്നെയോ അപ്ലൈഡ് സയൻസാണ്, ടെക്നോളജിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അതിനെ കുറച്ചൊക്കെ ഒന്ന് മാറ്റി ഈ കണ്ടെത്തലിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ പോകണമെങ്കിൽ അതിനൊറ്റ പ്രക്രിയയേ ഉള്ളൂ. ആത്മവിദ്യയെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് പറയുന്നതാണെങ്കിലും സകല ശാഖകളിലും സ്വീകാര്യമായ വാക്യമാണ്. ഭഗവത്പാദങ്ങൾ തന്നെ പറഞ്ഞു വെച്ചു, നോത്പദ്യതേ വിനാജ്ഞാനം വിചാരേണ അന്യസാധനൈഹി. വിചാരം കൂടാതെ മറ്റൊരു സാധനയിലൂടെയും ജ്ഞാനം പ്രകാശിക്കില്ല. അത് ആത്മവിഷയകമായ ഉപദേശത്തിലാണ് വരുന്നതെങ്കിൽ പോലും നമുക്കതെല്ലാ മേഖലകളിലേക്കും വ്യാപിപ്പിക്കാം. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു വിചാരം സത്യത്തിൽ പ്രാചീനം ആധുനികം എന്നില്ല, വാസ്തവത്തിൽ പൗരസ്ത്യം പാശ്ചാത്യം എന്നില്ല. കാരണം ശാസ്ത്രത്തിനൊരു നൈരന്തര്യമുണ്ട്. ഇന്നലത്തെ കണ്ടെത്തലിൻ്റെ മുകളിൽ ഇരുന്നിട്ടാണ് ഇന്ന് ഗവേഷണാരംഭം ചെയ്യുന്നത്, ഇന്നത്തെ കണ്ടെത്തലിന് മുകളിൽ ഇരുന്നിട്ടാണ് നാളെ ഗവേഷണാരംഭം ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അതുകൊണ്ട് പ്രാചീനം ആധുനികം എന്നതില്ല. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഈ കണ്ടെത്തൽ അങ്ങ് അമേരിക്കയിൽ കണ്ടെത്തിയതായതുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ സ്വീകരിക്കേണ്ട എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് ഇവിടെ ആദ്യമേ ഒരുന്ന് തുടങ്ങേണ്ട ആവശ്യമില്ല. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് പാശ്ചാത്യ പൗരസ്ത്യ ഭേദവും ഇല്ല. ശാസ്ത്രത്തിന് നൈരന്തര്യമുണ്ട്. ആ നൈരന്തര്യം തിരിച്ചറിയണമെങ്കിൽ ഇന്ന് രണ്ടായി വിഭക്തമായിരിക്കുന്ന ഈ കൂട്ടർ ഒന്നിച്ചിരിക്കണം. അതിനുള്ള വിചാരസഭകൾ അനിവാര്യങ്ങളാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഒരു പ്രാരംഭം എന്ന രീതിയിൽ ഇവിടെ ഈ ശങ്കരജ്യോതിയിൽ അത് സംഘടിപ്പിക്കപ്പെട്ട് കാണുമ്പോൾ വലിയ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. ഇത് വളരെയധികം വിപുലമായി ഭാവിയിൽ നടക്കുമെന്ന് നമുക്ക് സങ്കല്പിക്കാം. ആശിക്കാമെന്ന് പറയുന്നില്ല, പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാം. ആശയല്ല, പ്രതീക്ഷ തന്നെയാണ്. പ്രതീക്ഷിക്കാം. അത് വലിയൊരു ഒരു വൈജ്ഞാനിക പ്രസരിപ്പിക്കും എന്നുള്ളതിൽ ഒരു സന്ദേഹവും ഇല്ല. ഇവിടെ മനസ്സിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ഇപ്പോൾ വേദത്തിലേക്ക് പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാലും ഇനി വൈദിക ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളിലേക്ക് പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാലും ഒട്ടനവധി വെളിപ്പെടുത്തലുകളും പഠനങ്ങളും ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്. വേദത്തിലായാലും കൊള്ളാം, ഇനി വൈശേഷികത്തിലായാലും കൊള്ളാം, സാഖ്യത്തിലായാലും കൊള്ളാം, വേദാന്തത്തിലായാലും കൊള്ളാം. ഇതൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിനെക്കുറിച്ച് ഒരുപാട് ഋഷീശ്വരന്മാരുടെ കണ്ടെത്തലുകളും പ്രഖ്യാപനങ്ങളും നമുക്ക് ലഭിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അവയൊക്കെ അനുസന്ധാനം ചെയ്യാനുള്ള ഒരവസ്ഥ ഒന്ന്. രണ്ട്, ഏത് മേഖലയിലായാലും ജീവിതത്തിൽ വിജയിക്കണമെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ കരണങ്ങളുടെ ശരിയായ വിനിയോഗമാണല്ലോ മുഖ്യം. ക്രിയത്തെ അനേന ഇതി കരണം. എന്തിനെ കൊണ്ടാണോ ചെയ്യുന്നത് അതാണല്ലോ കരണം. അപ്പോൾ കരണങ്ങളിൽ പ്രഥമ സ്ഥാനം തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും അന്തഃകരണത്തിനാണല്ലോ. അന്തഃകരണത്തിനനുസരിച്ചാണല്ലോ സകല ബാഹ്യകരണങ്ങളുടെയും പ്രവൃത്തി. അപ്പം അതുകൊണ്ട് ഈ മനസ്സിനെ വേണ്ടതുപോലെ എങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ വിനിയോഗിക്കണം, എങ്ങനെ നിഗ്രഹിക്കണം അഥവാ നിയമിക്കണം, ഇത് പരമപൂജ്യ സ്വാമിജിയുടെ ഒരു വിഷയാവതരണമായിട്ട് ഇന്ന് ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് ശേഷം ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ വിഷയങ്ങളിലേക്ക് നമ്മൾ കൂടുതൽ ഇറങ്ങിച്ചെല്ലുമ്പോൾ പ്രായോഗിക തലത്തിൽ ഒട്ടനവധി പ്രയോജനം ഏത് മേഖലയിൽ ജീവിക്കുന്നവർക്കും ലഭിക്കും. അപ്പോൾ അതിലേക്ക് കടക്കുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് എന്ത് വേണം? മനസ്സെന്ത് എന്നുള്ളതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള നമ്മുടെ കാഴ്ചപ്പാടുകൾ ഒന്ന് പങ്കുവെക്കേണ്ടി വരും. അതിനൊക്കെയുള്ളൊരു സഭയായിട്ട് ഇപ്പം കേവലം വൃത്തിരൂപമാണോ മനസ്സ്? ആ വൃത്തികൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് സമുദ്ഭവിക്കുന്നത് എന്നുള്ള വിഷയങ്ങൾ വളരെ ഗഹനമായി ഇറങ്ങി പോണ്ടതാണ്. അതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള നമ്മുടെ ഋഷീശ്വരന്മാരെ കാഴ്ചപ്പാടുകൾ, പദാർത്ഥങ്ങളുടെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ മനസ്സിനെ പറഞ്ഞത് ശരിയാണോ തെറ്റാണോ, ഒട്ടനവധി ചർച്ചകൾക്ക് സ്ഥാനമുണ്ട്. ഏതായാലും നല്ല ഒരു സമാരംഭമായിട്ട് ഇതിനെ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ട് അത്തരമൊരു ചർച്ച ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടാവും. ചർച്ച എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ശാസ്ത്രീയമായതാണല്ലോ. ഏറ്റവും ആചാര്യ മുഖേന ശ്രവിക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് അതിൻ്റെ മൂലം. അതിനെ തുടർന്ന് മനനത്തിലൂടെ നമ്മൾ കൂടുതൽ ആഴത്തിലേക്ക് പോകാൻ നമുക്ക് സാധിക്കുന്നു. ശ്രവണ മനനങ്ങൾ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ സന്ദേഹങ്ങൾ വ്യാപിക്കും, സന്ദേഹങ്ങൾ പെരുകണം. എന്നാൽ ശ്രവണ മനനങ്ങളെ തുടരുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ക്രമേണ സന്ദേഹങ്ങൾ കുറഞ്ഞു വരുന്നത് നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റും. അതിലൂടെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു ഏക പ്രത്യയത്തിലേക്ക് എത്തിച്ചേരാൻ കഴിയും. ഈ ഏക പ്രത്യയത്തെയാണല്ലോ അനുഭവമെന്നും സാക്ഷാത്കാരമെന്നും ഒക്കെ പറയുന്നത്. ഈ വിഷയം സുവ്യക്തമായി കേനോപനിഷത്തിൻ്റെ വാക്യഭാഷ്യത്തിൽ ഭഗവാൻ ഭാഷ്യകാരൻ നമ്മുടെ മുമ്പിൽ വയ്ക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. പ്രത്യയങ്ങളുടെ ഏകത്ര സംഗതമാകുന്ന അവസ്ഥയ്ക്കാണ് വേദാന്തശാസ്ത്രത്തിൽ അനുഭവം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാക്ഷാത്കാരം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പം അത് ബ്രഹ്മവിഷയകമായി മാത്രമല്ല, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആത്മബ്രഹ്മ ഐക്യ വിഷയകമായി മാത്രമല്ല, ഏത് വിഷയത്തെ സംബന്ധിച്ചും ആ ഒരു നിഷ്ഠ, ദൃഢത നമുക്കുണ്ടാവണമെങ്കിൽ ഈ മന്ഥന പ്രക്രിയ മുന്നോട്ട് പോകണം. അതിനുള്ള വലിയൊരവസരം ഇവിടെ ലഭിച്ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. മാത്രമല്ല, ഈ കരണങ്ങളിൽ നമ്മൾ മനസ്സെന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ മനസ്സിനെയും ബുദ്ധിയെയും ചിത്തത്തെയും അഹങ്കാരത്തെയും വേർതിരിച്ച് പഠിക്കുന്ന, വെറുതെ മൈൻഡ് സബ് കോൺഷ്യസ് അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് എന്നുള്ള ലെവലിലല്ല, മറിച്ച് വ്യക്തമായി മനസ്സിൻ്റെ വൃത്തികൾ എന്തൊക്കെ, അതിൻ്റെ പ്രവർത്തന രീതികൾ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ, ഏത് ഘട്ടം വരെ മനസ്സ്, ഏത് ഘട്ടം കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ബുദ്ധിയും മനസ്സും തമ്മിലുള്ള ബന്ധം, അതെങ്ങനെ ചിത്തത്തിലേക്ക് ബന്ധപ്പെടുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഈ മനസ്സ്, ബുദ്ധി, ചിത്തം, അഹങ്കാരം എന്നിവയെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള വ്യക്തമായ ചില വീക്ഷണങ്ങൾ ഇതൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ലഭിക്കാൻ നമ്മുടെ ശാസ്ത്രങ്ങളിലേക്ക് പോയാൽ ലഭിക്കും. അപ്പോൾ ഇതിലൊന്നേ പറയാനുള്ളൂ, ഭാരതത്തിൻ്റെ അനാദിയായ 2 വീക്ഷണങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു സമന്വയ പദ്ധതി. ഒരു വീക്ഷണം ഈ ലോകം മുഴുവൻ നമുക്ക് ശ്രേഷ്ഠതയിലേക്ക് നയിക്കാമെന്നാണ്. എങ്ങനെ? അറിവിൻ്റെ പ്രസരണത്തിലൂടെ. അതാണ് ഒരു വീക്ഷണം. കൃണ്വന്തോ വിശ്വമാര്യം എന്നുള്ളിടത്ത് അത് സ്പഷ്ടമാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതേ സമയത്ത് എല്ലാം തികഞ്ഞവരാണ് നമുക്ക് വേറെ എവിടുന്നും സ്വീകരിക്കേണ്ട എന്നൊരു ആചാര്യനും പറഞ്ഞിട്ടില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് മറ്റൊരു വീക്ഷണം നമ്മുടെ മുമ്പിൽ വെച്ചു, ലോകത്തിൻ്റെ എല്ലാ ഭാഗങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നും സച്ചിന്തകൾ നമ്മിലേക്ക് വരട്ടെ. ആനോ ഭദ്രാ ക്രതവോ യന്തു വിശ്വതഃ. ഈ രണ്ടും ചേരുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് കൊടുക്കാനുള്ളത് കൊടുക്കുകയും ലഭിക്കാനുള്ളത് തുറന്ന മനസ്സോടുകൂടി സ്വീകരിക്കാനുള്ള ക്ഷമത ഉണ്ടാവുകയും ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അപ്പോഴാണ് വിദ്വത് ചർച്ചകൾ, വിദ്വത് ഗോഷ്ഠികൾ അതിൻ്റെ സാഫല്യത്തിൽ എത്തിച്ചേരുക. അത്തരമൊരു നല്ല സദസ്സ് ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടാവുമെന്ന് സങ്കല്പിക്കുന്നു.
Offering my sincere Sashtang pranams at the lotus feet of the Pithadishwar of Yadutare Sri Yoganandeshwara Saraswati Mat Sri Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji. Also offering my Sashtang pranams to Chidanandapuri Mahaswamiji. I will take a little time to share my thoughts and do my pleasant task of telling you about a little bit of the Yadutare Mat, Vedanta Bharati, and go to this topic, which is the retreat on the mind, Manasil Adhyatma Shibiram at Saankarajyothi. I will take the liberty and I'll try. Ellarikum Namaste. Ittoru Pratyeka Divasamano Nammal Bhumiyal Ettamum Vishuddhamana Sthalavanam Adi Shankara Janma Bhumi Kalady Sri Shankara Bharati Mahaswamigalas Daivya Sanidhyatalaru Nyangal Swami Namakul Pratyaksha Adi Shankaramano. That is my bhavana. Ishwaro Gururatmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. भवता जनता सुहिता भविता निजबोध विचार मचारु मते कलयेश्वर जीव विवेक विदम भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणम. 4 times Bhagavad Shankaracharya went all around the subcontinent, not just our India but the subcontinent. And I would like you to please see this map on the next slide, which shows how Sri Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji has gone 4 or 5 times already around the Indian continent, and this is how he has travelled. In the next slide you will see, all across various states of India doing the Shankara Bhagavad Pada Vichara Tattva Prachara. We move to see that Sri Shankara Bhagavad Padacharya incarnated, and he made sure that Sanatana Dharma survives for us all to live well. He propounded Advaita Vedanta Siddhanta, which was already there, but he propounded it. His Holiness Sri Sri Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji, who is the Peethadhishwar of Yadature Sri Yoganandeshwara Saraswati Mutt, is a 800-year-old religious traditional Sampradaya Mutt. But there is lots of spiritual, cultural and social activities also being taken care by the Mutt. If you notice that in Karnataka, in the lower part is the Mysore district, and in Mysore district there is Krishnarajanagara, and that is where there is the Yadature Matha. To give you a glimpse for those who are not familiar with that area, Krishnarajnagar is the main mutt. Then of course there is Hodenarsipura, there is Japatkatte, and now there is the Saankarajyothi, Manna, and this beautiful place which is a Pavitra place in Kalady. His Holiness Sri Sri Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji had the divine blessings of Sringeri Jagadguru to become the Peethadhishwar in 1995. In addition to all his dharmic traditional sampradaya, he went on to adhyatmic and social activities. Not to take too much of time, but this 800-year-old mutt has a great tradition, and it was begun by Sri Sri Yoganandeshwara Saraswati Mahaswamiji. And then I would like to highlight that there was a Tattva Sangraha Ramayana which was written by the Ram Brahmananda Swamiji, and that was a Sangraha of the Tattva of various Ramayanas. Today, even with Google, we are not able to get multiple things available. I really don't know how Jagadguru could do that. In 1995, Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji, His Holiness, adorned the Peetha. And these are a few pictures that you will see of the mutt in KR Nagar. And this is the temple and the Guru Bhavana in Japatkatte, which is just on the banks of the Kaveri Nadi. And that was where the rishis did japa, so it is known as Japatkatte. It's a very pristine place, as beautiful as this place in Kalady. To tell you some words about Vedanta Bharati, it is Vyapaka all over the country and all over the world. It does Vedanta Institution of Studies and Research, and it is recognized as a research center by the Tumkur University right from 1999. The chairman and trustee of Vedanta Bharati, as well as of the Sri Shankaracharya Vangmaya Seva Parishad, is His Holiness Sri Sri Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji. What do they do? What are the activities that is being done other than the religious parts? Where is Veda Namana? There is Bhashya Parayana. Shankara Sandesha Saptaha. All the Sandesha of Shankara Saptahas are being done. Stotra Patana Mahabhyana. There is a lot of emphasis given on Stotra Parayana, recitation of Stotras. And again and again and again, His Holiness keeps telling us that this is the simplest way of having Chitta Shuddhi. Very close to Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya, you know that in the Shankaracharya Ashtottara, Saundarya Lahari comes, and so also to our Guruji, Saundarya Lahari is extremely close to his heart, and so he had a very wonderful Saundarya Lahari Maha Abhiyan. Shankara Gita Saurabha. One of the most easiest way to touch everybody's heart is music. And nothing better than Shankara Stotras being sung as a musical note in both Hindustani and traditional Carnatic classical. There was a Gita Saurabha for a whole week in Bangalore. Vatu Shikshana. Guruji believes in catching us young, not after our retirement. And so he caught all these small children from 5 years and 6 years and taught them what has to be done in Sandhya-Vandana and all the other activities of dharmic living. This is happening every year in Japatkatte. There are several national seminars. There are many retreat programs like what we are having here. And these retreat programs are tailored to groups of people. So we have various professionals like doctors. That was the first one which began in 2017. Then there have been advocates. Then there are IT professionals, Ayurvedic doctors. Then there are teachers, yoga teachers. Then there are teachers from various engineering colleges, various students. And so every section of the society that we compromise of are going through these retreat programs. Bhashyamritini Vahini, a very innovative way of bringing the Upanishads to people in common who would not really get to know the Upanishads or scriptures, was an introduction of the Taittiriya Upanishad. There is also the PhD in Darshana Shastra. Several international conferences have been organized by Vedanta Bharati. Particularly two of them to be mentioned here is the Mrityunjaya Conference and the Ananda Conference, both at Ayodhya. And why was it Ayodhya? Because Guruji said that this is where Rama Janma Bhumi is, and this is where Jnana should come. Remembering the Rama Bhujanga Prayata Stotra, Vishuddham Param Satchidananda Rupam, that is where all the Jnana should go across the world. So he chose Ayodhya. Then there have been a lot of Santa Samaveshas at Sringeri, Varanasi, Ayodhya, collectively having all the Sants together and having a retreat for them. Kishora Sudha is a very beautiful program that has now spread across 23 countries. And these are very simple prayers, and these are prayers for children, and it is online. And more than about 4,000 children other than in our country, in 23 other countries, are learning this. They are in level 1, they have moved to level 2, level 3, and this has grown so well in the last 1.5 years. There has been a great transformation in Northeast India, where people would feel that no sannyasi has ever come here. His Holiness Sri Shankar Bharati Swamiji travelled across all the states of Northeast India, and there has been a remarkable turnaround and change in the mindset of the people there. It is very interesting and very happy to note that very recently in November, His Holiness went also to Teetwal, and we had a very beautiful darshan there. In Teetwal, there is a river, and that is known as Neelam by the Pakistanis, and it is known as the Shira Ganga Bhavani by the Indians. It is the line of control. Opposite side, just opposite the river, is the other country, and here we are. And I think they were also saying after so many years, nobody has come, no Swamijis have come, and we had a very wonderful darshan and a drishya. Shankar Bharati Mahaswamiji went to the river. He sat on a boulder and he put his legs into the river. So I think the river was waiting to be purified, because a sannyasi coming there, rivers purify us, but rivers also wait to be purified. So exactly the same way, looking at that picture in my mind, I oftentimes wonder, such a pavitra bhumi, janma bhumi of Bhagavad Shankaracharya, where are the steps that he has walked around? In the mutt, when Guruji walks, we are literally touching all the places after he has walked. I'm scared to walk here, because I don't know whether Bhagavad Shankaracharya walked right here. We might be sitting in this place where he was here. So it scares me sometimes. He has done several Vijayatras. So this is a picture of the Mrityunjaya conference in Ayodhya. That was a picture of the Shankara Gita Saurabha in November 2014, where Hindustani and Carnatic style music was played. And there was also the Saundara Lahari Stotra Samarpana in the presence of Jagat Guru Sri Vidushekara Bharati Mahaswamiji in Bangalore. This is a picture of the Bhashyamrita Vahini, which was in 2018. And this is how Guruji is received wherever he goes, all over the country. There are several Vidvat Goshtis, just like Swamiji Chidanandapuri Maharaj was mentioning, across the places. And this is a picture of, the Saundara Lahari Maha Abhiyan, which was conducted 2 times in the palace grounds in Bangalore. And you can see countless heads, everybody sitting there, all women and children reciting Ekakala Saundara Lahari. Saundara Lahari was so difficult. People would say, I will not teach you because you do not have the capacity to learn. And today, Saundara Lahari is propagated by His Holiness across literally every household in Karnataka, also now in Kerala for the last 1.5-2 years. And this is such a Mahasamarpane which happened. I may not be wrong if I say that the vision of Vedanta Bharati is Ekatma Bhava. Wherever you go, it is Ekatma Bhava. And I may not be wrong in saying that the mission is, His Holiness' mission is to spread the message of Pujya Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya Ji to each and everyone in the world. there is absolutely nothing else that comes to mind. We have now had a glance of what Vedanta Bharati is doing and what Guruji himself is in his divine presence. Now, when we come to this topic of the mind, we immediately go to the Bhagavad Gita, and the Arjuna who was ready for war and waiting to kill all the people in the war, when he goes between the two Kauravas and Pandavas, he says Ubayor Senayor Madhye, and he stands there. I don't know what happens, but he goes into depression. Where did that depression come for this? Oh Bharata. Depression came into his mind. Vishuddha. That's how the first chapter came. In the 6th chapter, Uddharet Atmanatmanam Atmanam Avasadhet Atmaiva Atmano Bandhuratmaiva Ripuratmanaha. This is the preamble of all the retreats of Vedanta Bharati. Your mind is your friend, your mind is your enemy. You work on your mind to improve yourself. You work on your mind. If you don't work on it, you are going to go down. So the point that comes to our mind is on a Vyavaharika level. We are always looking at either pleasure or happiness. What is this? Short-lived, visceral, giving is not there, but a lot of taking, using substances, experiencing alone for myself, becoming an addiction, giving rise to dopamine release in our brains is pleasure. However, if something is long-lived, which is ethereal, which is more of giving, which is not substance related, which is happiness in groups of people, never an addiction, releases serotonin in our minds, and that is happiness. More dopamine you seek, more of pleasure you seek, less happiness you get. This is the scientific understanding. We also know what is sadness. Small things like a thorn prick, food which doesn't taste well if the quality is poor, sound is harsh, the smell is poor, visual effect somewhere you see a lot of dirt, you don't like it. Various imaginations in our mind. The possessions that we have and the relations that we keep can all be a cause of sadness. It is interesting to note that neither pleasure nor happiness is what our gurus in the traditional sampradaya they want to give us. They want to give us Sampurna Ananda, which is everlasting. Can we click again? You would see this picture, and if you notice, this is how all the thoughts in our mind are. When you want to sit for a retreat, everybody talks of meditation. When you're in the meditation, this is how the thoughts are going in our mind. It's never still. If you go to the next slide, you will notice that there is a thought that comes. It dissolves. In a split second, there is another thought that comes. And these thoughts keep coming and coming and going. And you have literally no control. You're only an observer of those thoughts. So, when it is calm, when everything becomes clear, you can see that crystal clear thoughts are only when the mind is calm. And this is exactly the highlight that we should understand. If the water is still, you can see the rock bottom. If the water is moving, if the water is turbid, you cannot see the rock bottom. So only when there is still water, you come across it. And therefore, I would like to make this statement. Mind is a beautiful servant, but it is a very dangerous master. No wonder the same message is there in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayanindriyes charan atmane vaish vidheryatma prasadam abhigacchati. If you are moving around in the senses, you can never have happiness. If you move around only with keeping those senses under control, then you have happiness. So you have two choices. What are those two choices? We see in the next slide. You have the choice to control your mind, or you have the choice to let the mind control you. And that is also there in the same verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato vishayam pumsaha sangat tesha pijayate. And you will understand this, that if you dwell on the sense objects, desire comes, gives rise to anger, gives rise to delusion, memory loss, there's no discrimination, and that leads to ruin. A verse which I like a lot, आणोरणीयान् महतो मय्यान् आत्मा गुहायां निहितो अस्य जन्तोः तमक्रतुं पश्यति वीतशोको धातुः प्रसादान् महिमान् मात्मनः. Smallest of smallest things and the biggest of biggest things that you can ever imagine is being imagined in our mind. So what is the capacity of our mind? If this video plays, I would like you to kindly see it for the next maybe 2 minutes. Can you just click again, sir? No, it didn't. Can we go back? We'll just try once again if it clicks. Otherwise, we'll go back. Yeah, please click on it again in case it plays. Okay, doesn't matter. So maybe you can check this video. It's made by Google, and this person is a lady whose eyes, which is the entry to the mind, it shows up, and so I don't know if you can see, but I will show it on this. It opens on my laptop here. Maybe reasonably clear, but so this is 1 kilometer away from that eye, and then now we are going farther and farther away. This is 1,000 kilometers away from the eye, and then you see the planet Earth. And this is 100,000 kilometers away. We are seeing the lunar orbit. And then you see the 10 million kilometers away, you see the inner planets. 1 billion kilometers away, you see the outer planets, the Kuiper belt, dwarf planets. Then you come to the Oort cloud. Then the neighboring stars, the interstellar clouds. 1,000 light years later, you have the local bubble. Then you have the spiral arms. Then you come to the Milky Way, which we have read in our school, 1 million light years away. Then you have the neighboring galaxies, which are 10 million light years away. Then you have the cosmic web, 1 billion light years away. And then there is a uniform universe. And slowly all this resolves into the mind through the same eye. And this is a very beautiful video you can see sometime. I really like that. So I wanted to share with you. It might take a minute more. And as it merges through the eye into the mind, it goes smaller and smaller and smaller. 1 millimeter, 10 micrometers, blood vessels, blood cells. And then you have 1 micrometer, much smaller, chromosomes. Then you have the nanometers, the group of atoms. Then there's an oxygen atom, inner electrons, and there is atomic emptiness. There is space there also. The protons and neutrons, quarks, much smaller. So that's how it is. So the reason why I wanted to bring this ahead is that the mind can go deeper and deeper into the smallest of things, and it can go into the huge universe. What a capacity Lord has given us. So we move to the next slide, and I would like you to see this man pole vaulting. And as he pole vaults, he leaves the pole and crosses across. This is a very nice simile that I would like to highlight, because the pole vault is our mind. We have to use the mind to grow to bigger heights. And if you will not get stuck with the mind, there has to be manonasha, manolaya, leave the mind and cross across. Shakespeare once said in Orlando, Act 5, Scene 2, "Oh, how bitter a thing it is to look into happiness through another man's eyes. So don't look at happiness through your neighbor, or through your friend, you must look at happiness yourself. If I can also say a small phrase from Sant Kabir, who has also been a lot of Hinduism and also from the Sikhism, Bura jo dekhan main chala, bura na milya koi, which means when I went to see who is the bad man all around, I never got anybody. But jo man dekha apna, but when I saw my mind, I realized there's nobody worse than myself. So we have to improve on our mind. Vedanta Bharati has a very nice Google app, and there are all the stotras of Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya. This is available on the Google Play Store. Very soon it will also be available on the Apple version. So it's nice to have it because you can have all the stotras of Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya. The book, which is Shankara Stotrani, is here. So with this few words, and thanks for this divine blessings for me that I had this opportunity to come and share my thoughts in the presence of His Holiness, may I request that we move on with such a wonderful retreat in such a beautiful place like Kalady, in the presence of all of you here. Jai Gurudev.
Whenever Swamiji sends out a message that you have to give a talk, I know that it is for me. The biggest beneficiary is myself. To be honest, I have come here to learn more than to come and talk about the mind or scientific aspects of the mind. And what better place? Sadashiva is always there and is everywhere. Dakshinamurti. And of course, this is the birthplace of Adi Shankara, and we have Asmadacharyas. And to be in this place, to be able to seek the blessings of the Gurujis here is a tremendous privilege, and it is our own Purva Janma Punyas really. And great to see so many of the professionals coming from different walks of the life. I noted that there are so many psychologists here. May I just have a show of hands? Where are the psychologists sitting? Fantastic. I'm sure you can all join me and perhaps add more to the content also. And there are some doctors as well, and great to see all of you. So, talking about the nature of the mind from a scientific angle, it's a tough task. If Swamiji were to ask, talk about the abnormalities of the mind and how you deal with it, it is rather easier. Talking about the very nature of the mind itself is a Herculean task. We know that the brain itself is a mystery. Brain is an enigma. And what to talk of the mind? Science is always learning about it. There is a lot that we have learned. There is a lot that we haven't learned. We still are exploring. And I think this pursuit will continue for a long time. We'll just wait for these slides to appear. There is clearly not a very good consensus amongst the experts also. You take specialists from anywhere, from America, from anywhere really, the topmost scientists in this field, there has not been clear consensus on the aspects of the mind. And we will talk about it. We will talk about even the definition of the mind and how the definition itself varies. We will touch upon the interface between the brain and the mind. Some of the aspects about memory, chitta, we call from the antahkarana point of view. Some issues about personality, our ego defense mechanism, the ego, the self, how we identify ourselves. And Sir has already talked a little bit about addictions. We will touch on the neurobiology of the addictions. What exactly happens in the brain, and some of the cognitive models. So somebody has beautifully said, the mind is the most wondrous entity capable of unlocking the mysteries of the universe and shaping our future. But every mind is a kingdom of unmapped mysteries. We know about the galaxies, as Sir talked about and showed the universe from all across. But do we really understand the very instrument? Do we understand the mind itself? That is the biggest question. So let's look at the definition itself and the dilemmas related to it. Fourth slide, sir. Okay, next one. Yeah, that one. So, we understand that mind is a construct. It is a group of ideas which encompasses various aspects. It includes consciousness without we being aware. And let me make it very clear. The consciousness we are talking from the mind point is not the same consciousness we talk from the Vedanta point. There is a lot of difference. Consciousness here is being aware, being alert, to be able to grasp things from outside and inside. So it is that consciousness. And then we have the thoughts, which are vrittis, the feelings, which are emotions, perceptions, all that we are taking in from our sense organs, our belief systems, attitude and memories. Now that is mind. I think we have covered everything, almost everything that we kind of use in our day-to-day lives. Now whatever I am talking now, whatever you are listening to, everything is in a way culminated only because of the mind. And therefore, mind is the most important organ in our body. I use the term organ, although we don't see it. It is the most important organ for every transaction of ours. Mind is so close to the brain, yet it is not solely physical. It is of course shaped by our personal experiences, cultural backgrounds, the environment we grow up in. And it cannot be observed directly or measured objectively. When they go to a neurologist, they can do a MRI scan and see the anatomical structure. But what do I do as a psychiatrist? Many a times when they come for an assessment, they have to rely on my expert opinions on that. When they go to a psychologist, they have to rely on their formulations. There are no objective measures per se. So the definition, which is in a way agreed, again that's not final. It's the totality of psychological phenomena and capacities encompassing consciousness, thought, perception, sensations, mood, motivation, behavior, memory, and of course learning. So where is this mind? The biggest question now, where do you locate the mind? Many a times we say that mind is in the brain from a scientific viewpoint. Of course, Shastras have a different take on that. If there is no brain, clearly there is no operation for the mind. What about the gut feeling? We all get the gut feeling. Now there is a big research going on gut, our gastrointestinal system being the second brain. 2 layers of the gastrointestinal system starting from our esophagus to the rectum. Nearly 100 million neurons have similar properties and functionalities of that of the brain. So does it mean that mind is also in the stomach? Possibly, when we are feeling hungry. And what about the quantum physics? What do they say? They talk of, there is a picture there of neuron. Neuron is the basic cell in the brain. We have about 100 billion neurons. Within that, very small area, very small entity which is called as microtubules. Quantum physicists will argue that the properties of this microtubules is the same property that you see in the outside environment. And therefore bringing the arguments on the consciousness. There is a question of hard problem of consciousness. You can Google and see. And Professor David Chalmers and so many other quantum physicists are talking about it. And one of the greatest yogis, Sarvapriyananda, has debated with them from an Advaita perspective. So the microtubules is something which they say is the key for connecting, and it has all the entity. So the mind is the brain in action. The mind is the state when we know that the brain is alive and working. When the brain is dead, mind cannot function. What science will find it difficult to answer? And then what happens in the deep sleep? We know that the brain is active, brain is functioning. We know that we are still breathing and we are alive. What happens to the mind? They are still researching on that. So simply put, we can take mind as a software where the brain is the hardware. So our brain is the CPU. We are using these computers now, whereas the mind is the software for that. And we talked about this 135 billion neurons, and among them 85 billion of them are staying in our brain itself. So we have Mano, Buddhi, Chitta and Ahankara from a spiritual point of view, and we talked about what is it from a scientific point of view. So how do we know that the brain is the one which is responsible for all of this? Our feelings, our thoughts, our behavior. And this inquiry started in the late 18th century. To be precise, 1850s, around that. That gentleman there, his name is called as Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage, he was a railway employee working in America. His job was putting the dynamites and blasting the rocks in order to construct railway lines. In one such incident when he was doing, an iron rod passes through his brain. You can look at it. From the left side, it goes inside and cuts across the front portion of the brain of what we call as frontal lobes. He somehow survived. Thank God he survived. Because of him, a lot of learning happened. After this injury happened to him and doctors kind of removed that and did whatever little surgery they could, what the family members found out was he was no longer the same person. Everything else was all right. His memory was fine, his functioning and going and working was fine. But what changed was his personality. What changed was the way in which he was perceiving the feelings. What changed was his behavior. And then doctors and scientists began to understand that it is the front of the brain, the frontal lobes, which is responsible for a lot of our emotional aspects, behavior, our thinking faculty. And from there the research continued. Today we have a lot of functional MRIs, we have PET CT scans, we have EEGs. So much of research is now progressed to understand how different lobes of the brain have different functioning. And again, we are moving away from that. It is not just the lobe, it's how they interplay, how they connect with each other, how the tracts, all the connections happen between them, all of them play a role. And through the conditions also, through accidents, Dr. Ravi Shankar says a lot of trauma cases, head injuries, and we know once they recover from the head injury, certain faculties in them do not function properly. Then we know that that faculty is important. There are instances where some people have become more religious and more spiritual after head injury. Somebody who has never turned to the God has become more spiritual. We know certain areas of the brain which are involved in that. Epilepsy, dementias, schizophrenia, taking medicines can sometimes alter the way we think and way we behave. From that we know certain areas of the brain are involved. And of course recreational drugs, heroin, methamphetamines, cocaine, so rampant. Kerala is full of all of that, and not just Kerala, everywhere it is there. So that changes the behavior. We know how it functions in the brain. So perceptions. So through the sense organs, everything which is grasped through the sense organs, through neurochemical complex mechanism. It's a very complex mechanism. In fact, I'm standing here and talking to all of you is a wonder. All of us. It is a wonder that we have this body. It is a wonder that we have this brain and how it functions. It's fascinating. Nothing can be more divine than that. If you are looking at Vishwarupa and abilities of the God manifesting, nothing can be more, kind of a divinity and a wonder than this. So all of that, for all the percepts go to the brain and the brain relays it back. It's a feedback loop which happens. So we touched on this. So I will be going a little quicker just to save a bit of time for any interactions later on. For example, we see a snake. Of course, this is an evolutionary fear about the snake. I think from generations we have been kind of scared of the snake. So whenever even a child sees a snake, even without knowing it is a snake, child can get a little bit, feared and anxious. As soon as that happens, that signal goes to the brain, to be precise, thalamus, which is the main junction. It is like you have the train junctions, Ernakulam is a big junction, it goes there. And from there, that signal goes to another area of the brain called as amygdala, which is the center for all of our emotions. So it releases certain neurotransmitters. From there, the messages go to the adrenaline glands, which is above the kidneys, where adrenaline is released. And adrenaline's function is what? To prepare us either to fight, either you fight or kill the snake or run away. That happens everything you imagine in split seconds. Which means what? Somewhere in the brain, somewhere in the body, this memory is there. Either we talk of evolutionary memory through the genes, or our own learnt memory where different areas of the brain are involved. That is where everything is stored. And in order for something to get stored, we need attention. Attention is what? Chitta ekagrata. At least to begin with, we have to absorb whatever I am saying right now. Whatever Swamiji is going to say, our brain and mind has to, in a way, first of all, be attentive. There are certain areas of the brain which are localized as the areas of the brain responsible for our attention span. If there is a damage to that area of the brain, our attention ability can come down dramatically. There is something called as sustained attention. Sustained attention is concentration. And of course, executive attention, which means there are more than one information coming, yet we are aware of these changes happening. You are all sitting here, you will also know something else happening outside. So that is the executive attention. Then we go to the different areas of the brain which deals with different types of the memories. For example, now I have a little bit idea. I've come to Kalady before. So certain areas of the brain has a recognition. It is all coded neurochemically, just like the computer. For example, everything is typed up and we put control and yes and save it. Just like that, automatically every percept that we take is getting registered in the brain. More and more you do the same thing, it becomes more and more closer to your access, and therefore your behavior changes. So there is something called as episodic memory, which means it's all about facts. I know that Kalady is like this, airport is like this, I need to use and come, this is what, and what does it mean to me? That semantics, that is again another portion of the brain which is involved. Likewise, there are different portions of the brain which are involved for certain memories. So more and more we do certain things. For example, cycling, swimming, etc. These are called as procedural memory, and they are all called as implicit memory, stored at again different areas. Back of the brain, cerebellum is involved a lot. Even when we are walking, the balance, everything is remembered. First time when the child walks, there is a perception, there is a proprioception. That perceptual memory is stored in the brain, and the next time I know I shouldn't fall. Evolutionary theories say that life is to live. It should not cause any harm to you. Therefore, the fear response, we should not fall, that is remembered. So everything you think of in a way can be explained through the memory. This is one of the slides which kind of covers every aspect of the memory and how our brain is involved. So what about the intelligence then? We talk about AI now, artificial intelligence, and of course AI of Adhyatmic intelligence also. So what is that? Again, it's the combination of the mind and the brain. It is the capacity for abstraction, logic, understanding, self-awareness, learning, emotional knowledge. Everything is loaded here. Again, the front of the brain specifically, in coordination with various other aspects of the brain, are involved in this. We are all awake now, we are conscious, and that is because of what we call as a reticular activating system. This is a bit like an auto generator that we all have, which is always functioning. It is the brain stem which is recognized as the reticular activating system, where all the basic centers responsible for our heart, lung functioning, all of them are there in that particular area. So why are we the way we are? We all have individuality, our own personalities. Even identical twins are not the same when it comes to their behavior. While looking, we are all different. Personality wise also we are all different. So this is all because of the complex interface and interaction between biological factors, which are genetical, environmental factors, what we grow up with, and what kind of exposure we have as children in our formative years, particularly from the age of 0 to 8. What is that we get exposed to? And then of course the impressionable years later on, And then the psychological faculties, what personalities we develop into, and of course our belief system, culture, the education, all of them will lead to who we are and form what we call as ego. Within this, we have three different things. We are not fully aware of ourselves. We have the ego. You can see that ego is mostly, in a way, half of it is submerged. And we have the guiding principles from what we call as superego. This is how the rules should be. And then we have the unconscious of our own selves that we can't tap it. There are different personalities, personality disorders, personalities. Everything is being talked about from a psychological viewpoint, which I am not going into right now. I want to touch on this. Because of who we are, we develop what we call as ego defense mechanisms. For example, when somebody talks to us and we don't like about it, some of us get angry. Some of us withdraw and not talk at all. When we get angry, which is called as displacement, that is an ego defense mechanism, which is an immature defense mechanism. When sometimes we intellectualize everything, because they did this, I am doing this. Usually it ends up there. You can look at the right side of the column, there is something called as mature defense mechanism. Within that, there is altruism, thinking for wellness of everybody. Humor is a mature defense mechanism. Sublimation means directing one unwanted behavior to more matured behavior. For example, somebody who has anger issues joining boxing, that is sublimation. Asceticism, we talk about asceticism, which is a bit like Sthita Pragnas. For that, mind and sense control is absolutely necessary. In fact, that is considered as one of the most highest forms of the mature defense mechanism. Reward pathway, Ravi Shankar sir talked about it. We have areas in the brain which gets activated as soon as we like something. As soon as we see something, let us say a mobile phone is an object and we like it because of we are using it, and areas of the brain releases certain neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine that sir talked about, and that dopamine gives us a lot of pleasure, and that pleasure is remembered. This is the reward pathway. Now, the amount of dopamine released varies depending on what is that object. For example, if one takes a drug, some recreational drug, amount of dopamine released is much more. And over a period, that is what causes addiction. Therefore, you can see the baseline itself will be a lot higher. Whereas for a normal thing, dopamine release will still be there, but it will come back to the baseline. So, ultimately, it is the sense object which is the most powerful thing. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshopajayate. You engage with it more and more. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. You get that desire to get more and more of it. Because of what? Dopamine. It keeps releasing. You want more and more of it. And you get addicted to that. Kamat dhyayato vishyan pumsaha sangasteshopajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. Obstructed kama leads to krodha, which means the drug that you want is not available. See that drug could be a mobile phone, that drug could be anything, and Vedanta will go on to say that drug is even your body and mind. It is at what level we get addicted to. And then from there we start to rationalize. Krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohad smriti vibramaha smriti bramsha buddhinasha buddhinasha patashyati. So obviously you get more and more deluded that what was a need initially, I need the phone to operate and then use it, then it becomes I want that phone. Without this phone I cannot survive. Now slowly what was the need became more powerful, and from that person has it, so I can have it. So you start to intellectualize everything. So you can see how it starts to take over, and there is a clear neurochemical mechanism which happens in the brain because of that. So cognitive theorists will say, all the psychologists will know this, all the emotions are associated with a thought. You get angry, you have a thought behind it. So there is thoughts and emotions are almost like two sides of the same coin. That determines our behavior. And of course, through CBT, which is commonly used therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, you restructure these thoughts. You identify these automatic thoughts. These vrittis keep coming to you without even thinking because you are so much drawn into it. But subsequent vrittis you can identify. Subsequent thoughts you can identify, start to restructure, and then you can come out of that vicious cycle. Ladder of needs, I have just put it, Maslow's, and we have Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha from spiritual point of view. We just talked millennia of years ago. And we have this basic needs and self-actualization which comes on the top. Again, highest form of fulfillment. How, one finds out about one's own self is there in the top of the list also. We all have heard of IQs, intelligent quotient, where mostly, again, it is not absolute. There is a lot of interplay between the lobes of the brain. A lot of analytical aspects of the brain are covered, which is on the left side. We have the EQ, which is emotional quotient, right side of the brain. And there is a fascinating SQ, which is spiritual quotient, when both the sides will start to integrate and one gets that essence of oneness, just as Ardhanara Ishvara really. So we all have it within us. So emotional quotient is the complete mastery over sense and the mind control. Only with that one can have a spiritual quotient. There is no spiritual quotient without the emotional quotient. So we have to, I think the ultimate goal for self-actualization, you need to enrich the emotional quotient and then go on to the spiritual quotient. So what is the benefits of spirituality? Be it any form. Infinite expansion in attitude towards self and the other. Suddenly the Sarvatma Bhava will come. And then it makes them more gracious and grateful, and compassionate feeling will come. All of that is for whom? For oneself. They will be more compassionate about oneself. It of course improves the emotional intelligence, mastery over sense control and mind control. Shama, Dhamma will happen. Altruism will be there. They are better equipped to handle the crisis. The most important thing. We are all okay when we are sitting in the satsang. We are all okay in the vicinity of the Guruji. But the moment you go to the work or moment you face any adversities, back to square one. Ones who develop this SQ, less likely. They might still have their occasional moments, but the frequency, the intensity of their responses will be far lesser and they recover quickly. And of course, there is a tremendous immunity towards the psychological disorders. Depression, anxiety, stress disorders are extremely common. So there are some questions as to whether spirituality is hardwired. I am not going into these details. There are some areas of the brain which they have identified as, if that area is either underactive or overactive, some people can be spiritual. I wanted to touch upon this aspect called as spiritual bypassing, which is something that a Buddhist philosopher started, and we all understand this, John Wellwood. Sometimes when a person is in a spiritual path, we get stuck at times. From the information, there is no emotional transformation. It is all academic for some group of people. That can be for various reasons. Of course, we talk about sadhanas. The sadhanas are not sufficient. That is largely true in most number of cases. But there is a small group of people who may have a significant emotional trauma. It could be an abuse. It could be a sexual abuse growing up as a child. Some deeper, losing a parent very early. Sometimes these emotional traumas can be so strong that any spiritual knowledge cannot penetrate them. So what I am suggesting is, it is absolutely fine to go and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist even if you are going through a spiritual path. Anybody can have this. Just like how we go and see Dr. Ravi Shankar for ortho problem even if you are a satsangi. It is perfectly okay to see a psychologist even if you are in a spiritual path. I do see a lot of monks who come to the OPD. I do see a lot of people who are spiritual sadhakas for various reasons. Of course, they're all, sometimes some of these specific things needs to be addressed also. So, let's tap into this SQ, the most precious gift that we have. And that is our responsibility. I am not going into that quote. Let's expand the mind as it is as infinite as the space, and let's mind our mind at all times. Elevate yourself through the power of your own mind and not degrade yourself. For the mind can be your best friend and or the worst enemy of the self. Uddharet atmana atmanam avasadayet atmaiva atmano bandhuho atmaiva ripuratmanah. Hari Om.
First question. Because we create everything through imagination. We call the second avastha is also Swapna. Swapna is where we call Hiranyagarbhan is the creator. So Hiranyagarbha means the immense amount of creativity potential. Is that been connected to the brain? Point number one. My second question is regarding the bipolar trait and spirituality. Because when we study bipolar trait, one is called hyper religiosity. Is being classified as one thing. Is there such connections? And how have you seen people who getting with bipolar trait more into spiritual side, or how do we manage them?
Interesting questions, sir, both of them. Nice questions. So, as far as the dream and sleep is concerned, it is still a big area of research, as according to the science. There is a lot which is learned already. Sleep, as we know, is broadly classified from a scientific viewpoint into non-REM sleep and REM sleep, rapid eye movement. Non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement. Rapid eye movement is generally considered as a dream sleep, whereas Sushupti, non-rapid eye movement, itself is further classified into four different stages. Dreams is something which is really not understood very well. Again, if you go back to the question, nothing in the dream that you will see that you haven't already known or experienced in the wakeful state. Whatever you already know will have to come. Obviously, everything is jumbled. Everything is all over the place. Sometimes the quality of dream that you get, what kind of things you get, might tell you something which is deeper psychological. When it comes to the memory per se, we are talking about the same traditional memories. Emotional memory in areas of limbic system, amygdala, hippocampus. So there are, I suspect it is exactly that, but I don't know the specific areas per se. Whereas the second question of bipolar disorder, for people who don't know, bipolar disorder is a very, very common, serious mental illness. People would have heard of depression on one side. On the other side, we have extreme happiness, what we call as a mania. Mania and depression, if somebody has it together, it is called as bipolar disorder. It's not necessary that they will have it together at the same time. Episodes of depression and episodes of mania, and this is highly heritable. People generally, they say that people, after women, when they have deliveries and when they go through a psychological disturbance, when they have what we call as puerperal psychosis, they are more prone to get bipolar disorders. Now, when they are very happy, they become hyper religious. The word I am using is hyper religiosity, not hyper spirituality. Hyper religiosity is something that they do which causes lot of disturbance to not themselves but others. All their family members, they are oblivious about their problems. They are okay, they are very happy. But the biggest problem is for the family members and the near and dear ones. In psychiatry and psychology, normality and abnormality is defined by what it does to the individual and to people around them. Anything can be abnormal. We can actually give a label to anything and say you have abnormality, provided that is causing a problem to oneself or the others. So dysfunction is the key. So if there is hyper religiosity causing dysfunction, for example, somebody is going miserly person who suddenly starts to donate money in crores, right? People, I've had a lot of patients who had given off their property, written checks and sold their cars without the knowledge of anybody, and we had to in a way go to the courts to reverse it, because he would have done it in a state of mind which was abnormal. I hope I have answered your questions.
My question is relating to this. You mentioned about the consciousness from the Vedantic point of view and consciousness from the psychological point of view. I didn't get that distinction exactly. Another query is with regard to the evolutionary memory you mentioned here. Everything is stored in our thing. And I have a personal question in the sense whether this healing techniques and associated things are already stored in our memory, whether it can trigger spontaneously or not. This is what I wanted to.
Consciousness, again, big topic now. Hard problem of consciousness is what it is talked about. And Swami Sarvapriyananda says, if you are an Advaitin, there is no hard problem at all. If you are a Dvaitin, there is a problem. If you see you as separate from the world, there is a problem. From a scientific point of view, consciousness is simply being aware and alert and having the ability to discern, know about oneself. It could be wrong knowing also. It could be irrational, wrong interpretation, so be it. But we are aware. Okay. In the medical terms, we use some of these consciousness scales, Glasgow coma scale, to see whether they are alert, conscious, etc. So, as far as consciousness, we have also talked about certain areas of the brain which are involved. If that is defunct, then one will have to say somebody is not conscious, they are in coma, like brain death and all of that they talk about. Whereas the other question, I think DNA is, again, it's something, epigenetics is an area which explores all of this. Lot of things are there, stored, evolutionary, how we have come to where we are right now. And if, for example, a newborn baby, there is a reflex. Gynecologist, as soon as obstetrician, when they deliver, they leave the baby and see whether the hands spread out. Who will teach the child that they have to stretch the hands to support? There must be some memory. As far as healing is concerned, I did not specifically understand, but I know where you are getting into. There are a lot of people who do what we call as past life regression therapies. In Shastras, we accept this law of karma. We accept that the Purva Jarma karmas and sufferings can be brought forward. And there are therapists who take a person to the past janma to resolve some of these deeper psychological scars that they may be having. In modern science, a lot of people practice this. In fact, a lot of my own colleague who's practiced in UK, who's doing it in Bangalore, past life regression therapy. Now here the question, we are not there to prove whether it was there, whether somebody was a king before or not. That is not the point. Bottom line is, can they come out of the suffering? Can they come out of today's conflicts so that they are functional? Which is the core essence even in spirituality. Can you lead a life without conflicts, very free, go to your innate nature? I think that is the whole point. Nobody can prove, or in other words, disprove also. Law of karma, how can they prove or disprove? So you can say it is there. I mean, it works for the individual.
Many people are suffering with hypothyroidism and thyroid issues. And you have mentioned about thalamus as well as adrenal gland. So other glands, especially pituitary gland and thyroid issues, and how the bhakti, mananam, dhyanam, spirituality, etc., helping to control all these things according to the science. Thank you.
So not only thyroid, sir, we are suffering from all kinds, everything. The kind of environment we live in, the pollutions, urbanization, the food that we take in, thoughts that we take in, I think have a huge impact on various conditions, not only thyroid. So connect between thyroid and the mind, particularly we see there is a good or higher chances of depression in people who are hypothyroid, underactive thyroid. Hyperthyroidism sometimes can have a lot of anxiety. They are very jittery. They are very restless. So sometimes we look at it in that sense. In terms of what dhyana and spirituality can help, we have to understand one thing. It will help in many ways, but it may not be a panacea for all the. For example, if somebody has a fracture in the bone, can spirituality fix that fracture? But what spirituality can do, dhyanam can do, is your ability to withstand that to a degree where you go and seek help. Separation between, I remember Vidyaranya's Jwara and Anujwara. Jwara is not only to the body, but to the mind also. You can have issues with it. Anujvara is your own attribute towards what you have. If you are suffering because of that problem, clearly, meditation, yoga, spirituality can help you dissociate. Great Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, they suffered cancer, but they didn't suffer. They had cancer. You see how conditioned we are. We say suffering is something that we all go through. So they did not suffer, although they had such painful conditions themselves. I think in that way, that's all we need to do. Controllables and non-controllables. Body, mind, it has its limitations. Not only through diseases, not only through whatever it happens, but whether we can discern and the ability to withstand and do what has to be done. There is no rule that a person with diabetes, a lot of yogis are they have diabetes and they need to take medicine. They have to take medicine. It is to the instrument. So ability to discern, and therefore the suffering will not be there. Perhaps their immune system also improves when there is no suffering. We need more studies maybe on this issue. You can make a distinction. What is a good addiction and what is a bad addiction? In fact, mumukshutvam, one should have the intense desire, which means what you should lean on to this. So we can discern what is good and what is not so good. And again, look at the dysfunctionality. What is it doing to you? Have that mindfulness. The second question was about hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations are false perceptions even when there is no percept. For example, if you actually look at a rope and think that it is a snake and convinced about it, that is an illusion because there is something there. But if there is nothing there and you think there is a snake and nobody else can see it, that is a visual hallucinations. Likewise, we can have in any sensory modality. No, classically speaking, that is abnormal because there is something happening in the brain. But if it is transient, if it happens for a short period of time, when you are sitting for a meditation or doing yoga, doing some other sadhanas, it is not abnormal. Something is a disorder if it is consistently happening and it causes lot of dysfunction. All of us get this kind of abnormal or whatever experiences. I wouldn't call abnormal. Some of these experiences, we all get it. But that necessarily doesn't mean it's a disorder which needs a lot of intervention. If it is consistent and causing a problem, yes.